You emphasised the Genesis mandate to be fruitful and multiply. How does this work out in practice for Christian parents and having children? So was the emphasis on what we do today.
So this regarding what should be the application of being fruitful and multiply. So I have had this discussion with even some people in our church and considered some of the kind of do's and don'ts. Now I'm going to eventually answer this with a key principle mindset, but there's a few kind of arguments and perspectives. Now some would say that from the moment you're married to the moment that you are unable to have children, so whether it be like the woman reaching menopause or something physically happens where it just means you cannot anymore, then you should be open and ready to have as many children as you can, because that's the way to obey the be fruitful and multiply command. Now, as a principle, we as Christians, I would argue, should have a desire to have many children. But we do also need to recognize that there are factors that are in place that are realistic to consider. So one of the key problems in this area is that many families, most Christian families that I've spoken to, they don't desire to have sometimes even any or many children because it doesn't suit them or their circumstances. So if you've got a principle foundation of, well, I don't want to have many children because I want to do X, Y, or Z, then I would be saying that as Christians, we need to challenge that, because that would quickly be going against the command to be fruitful and multiply. But let's say, for example, you're dealing with maybe one or both who have a significant health issue. Let's say the woman has significant difficulties with the process of labor or even the pregnancy or issues connecting with one or both of their health, where it's maybe difficult for them to imagine having, let's say, 6, 7, 8 children because of some practical circumstances of that nature, then I would be arguing that though you have a desire to be upholding and obeying this command of being fruitful and multiply, then there could be reason and grounds where you would maybe seeking to delay that. You know, for example, instead of thinking, well, I want to make sure I'm having a child every year, maybe things would be spaced out a bit more, or maybe thinking that there comes a time when you reach a certain age where maybe you're not going to be so intent in seeking to have a child. Also, with regards to the subject of contraception, so I wouldn't be saying to any Christian family that this is something that, like, I'm talking in terms of the usage of a condom, for example, not something that is going to actually be effectively aborting the child. That should never be done, just to be clear on that. But even in terms of anything that is a means of decreasing the chances of getting pregnant, that I would be encouraging caution with regards to usage of that at the very least. But at the same time, again, the question would be on, well, what's the desire of you as the Christian couple? Do you desire to obey this command to be fruitful and multiply? So it is a complicated one, because people kind of say, well, this is my set amount. I want to have 2 children, and then I want to do such and such. But actually, we need to be thinking more in terms of, well, God is the one who ordains our steps, and it may well be that I have more children than God had planned. Yeah, so it's quite a complex subject, because normally when I deal with this subject, I speak to people on a more one-to-one basis. So I think more the principle would be how I would approach this in a kind of wider setting, where there should be an emphasis on seeking to do that which is in obedience to the Lord, not that which is going to be most suitable to my personal circumstances, but certain circumstances, like, for example, maybe health and other factors, could impact the amount of children that you may have. So that would be the kind of answering it in a more general way. Does anyone have any kind of specific points or questions within that? Because if someone's wanting to ask, like, oh, should I have at least 4 children, that type of thing? Because again, I would say there's not a set number. I mean, we, like my wife and I, we know a couple who they've had repeated miscarriages. They've only got 1 child. And it could be difficult, and in a situation like that, it could be difficult if you have repeated miscarriages to continue to be getting pregnant. So there's 2 very different things. Yeah. If you're being given certain prognosis on certain things, I think there's still an argument to consider that, well, God is the one who is sovereign. Now, yes, there's still risk involved in a child being disabled, but if the Lord has decreed that this child is to be born and is disabled, then they can still be raised in a loving environment. So I would say in that case, because they've had the conviction to obey what God has commanded, that it's actually an example of Psalm 127, verse 3, where this child is a heritage, a blessing from the Lord, even though this child has been afflicted by this fallen world. I mean, it does have a kind of bearing in some circumstances. I mean, we knew a couple who had a child early this year who had a condition where he was only going to survive for a matter of hours because his skull hadn't formed properly. And everybody within the NHS not only were insisting that they abort this child, but they just assumed that this child would be aborted. And they were absolutely vehement in saying, no, we are going to have this child. And they did. And it was a powerful testimony. And now they're expecting another child. And again, yeah. You know this family, yeah.
There's an interview on YouTube with
Yeah.
William, with this man, the father, and it's wonderful. You should,
Yeah.
listen,
Finn Rowan's his name, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Finn Rowan is the name.
Yeah.
If you look it up on YouTube,
Yeah.
you should get it.
Yeah. Because, again, we have to consider when it comes to, we factor in issues with maybe the child's health or even our own health. This is the sacrificial nature of having children. So from a woman's perspective, we see in Genesis 3, and this is in no way to kind of downplay this, we see that there's going to be affliction in childbearing and the nature of motherhood. So there's very much a sacrificial framework. And child after child, it can have more of a physical impact on a mother bodily. And yet she's looking at Psalm 127 verse 3, looking at Genesis 1:28 and seeing, well, this is what God has called as such an important part of how society and how the world is to function and to flourish. And so, yes, the affliction of the fall may result in afflictions bodily to children or to mothers or sometimes even to families in general, but there's still a desire to do that which is honoring to the Lord. And that would be what I would strongly argue as Christians we should be desiring to see happen and encouraging families to move towards. So in our church, if we've got a young couple, we would very much be encouraging that, yes, you get married and you be fruitful and multiply. In terms of the practicalities, we're not saying, well, day one, you need to make sure that you get your wife pregnant, because we know the Lord is the one who decrees the time and the steps. But having that desire to do that which is obedient to the Lord would be something I would argue is a really important thing.